All right, here we go. Hey, everybody. Greg Poole here at Junkie Media, bojunkie.com. It's time for another podcast. For those of you listening, going to introduce the guest here. For those of you watching on the YouTubes, you can already see who it is. He's got his hair did and all of that. But um, before I get started, I've known this kid for a long time. If you're asking, how long I might have known this kid, I think I feel myself being a little hot on the mic. 1 2 1 2. If you're wondering how long, and he's not ready for this, by the way, but if you're wondering how long, and I'm going to explain this to the folks, if I can get my damn background. There we go. So I am holding up a picture from an ASA in 2016 with me and David and I doing an interview for Junkie where he looks like he's 11 years old. He looks like he has no idea what's happening and that the camera is going to steal his soul. So that was a picture I'm holding up there for those of you listening. The reason that I'm doing that is to explain that obviously David's a friend, bringing him on the program to talk about some stuff, but I would be remiss if I didn't point out the fact that David Hauser could throw when it comes to shooting bows. Um, April April of 2016, I think it was. Before the known pro was the known pro, it was the known 50. Known 50 in the ASA, Mr. David Hauser had the record for one day at 32 up. Are you processing that? 32 up, one day, known 50. Before it was known pro. That's how long this kid's been doing this. He's a 28X Vegas type guy. I mean, I interviewed him when he had cleaned both days in Vegas. Like, make no mistake, David Hauser can shoot a bow. He can still shoot a bow. He shows up to Vegas just like randomly and like just still drops 300s like they're for free. So I say that because a lot of times in our industry, people talk about things, people make products, and the constituency at large, archers, and in this case, especially the internet, tends to go, yeah, who is that and why did he do this? And what makes him an expert to do this? Well, in this regard, that's kind of one of the reasons we're doing this podcast because I've known David a long time. He's a great kid and he could absolutely shoot a bow. So for him transitioning into engineering, getting on with Beast Broadheads, part owner of Beast Broadheads, and developing what is easily the most advanced mechanical broadhead in decades, that's a conversation worth having. Plus, he's a cool dude. So without any further ado, we're going to bring in David Hauser. What's going on, buddy?
Oh, same old Greg. Thank you for the incredible intro there. Some accolades from back in the back in the day. I
Right.
certainly, yeah, we've known each other. We go way back from the Bow Junkie days, all the events and everything. So it's a pleasure to be on, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you today.
Absolutely. I mean, that picture I showed was from 2016. I had just taken over Junkie in February of 2016. So that interview that I took that picture from was you were literally one of my first conversations. Folks, do you want to know how early on with Junkie that was? I had a tripod. I would put David where he needs to be. I would hit record on my phone. I would run around to where David is, hold my hand up, drop it, and then start the interview, and then have to go in and edit that on my phone before I posted it. That's how far back we're talking. But anyway, man, so a lot of folks that, may have been familiar with you from back in those days, probably, you're not a huge social media guy. You don't live your life on social media. And so kind of give, those folks that were familiar with you from back in the day, and some folks now that are just kind of meeting you, just kind of give them the cliff notes of what David Hauser's been doing.
Yeah, man. So obviously all the times at the events, ASA, NFAA, I shot the whole tour. Did a couple some of the international stuff indoor. That was all the entire way through 2019 and into early 2020. But of course, as we all know, that year was a very interesting time for everybody. Obviously,
Right.
with everything being shut down, canceled, all the events essentially non-existent for the foreseeable future. And it was at a time that of course, with no events coming for 6, 8, months a year, no idea when it start back up. It was something that that was a very clear time for me to kind of take a pivot. And obviously, in that time frame to ensure that, Kelly and I just got married and, we of course want to start a family. So definitely had to pivot to see, okay, what other opportunities are out there if archery isn't something that is going to be obviously readily available. And who knows when the next time we'll be able to compete is going to be. So I had actually during previous to that, I attended Penn State University and got my degree in mechanical engineering. And I had started an engineering company, started an LLC, as it was something I was always interested in with how things work, and the mechanics behind anything mechanical, functional, etc., especially in archery. And it was just something that always fascinated me. So it was a logical during that time when everything shut down, I'm like, well, I'll just start to scale up my engineering company and begin doing like product design development and really just kind of dove all into that as we all had exceptional amounts of free time, especially with no traveling occurring.
All right.
So I started that engineering company and began product design and development. And then that was something that in that time frame in early April, I was doing just all kind of projects, not just in archery, but a lot of like freelance type work with product development. If somebody may have an idea and need something created for prototyping, 3D printing, and all that. And then kind of that was how the transition occurred from archery into the engineering side of things, and that's kind of how I found myself here today and having this conversation with you.
There you go. So what I didn't know you went to Penn State. That's pretty cool. And so when that decision started to come, or actually when you were going to college and you kind of had the degree and you were shooting, when you kind of made that decision, was being an engineer in archery kind of the thought process, or were you open to pretty much doing anything?
So obviously I wanted to pursue something in archery because I was so passionate and the knowledge base that I had gathered from, that was how I paid my bills for a lot of years. So that knowledge base of that every day shooting, practicing, tinkering, iterating. I mean, the game from shooting target bows, you're always trying to find that edge. But it was definitely something that archery and engineering obviously went hand in hand. But during my time becoming an engineer, I knew that I had something kind of burning in me that I wanted to do maybe something a little bit more in besides just shooting, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's one of those things that there's a time for any sport, you have a kind of an expiration date with when, kind of continued upward movement continues to happen with excelling at your game. There's in any sport, whether it be football, basketball, archery, you kind of have a climb and then you have a plateau and then an unfortunate decline after that. So it was something that I definitely didn't want to have all of my eggs in that basket with just shooting professional. I wanted to have a secondary aspect and always been fascinated by business and all things associated. So that was something that it was a logical step to transition into archery. But of course, at the time, I honestly, with the uncertainty of the world at the time, I was just really looking into all different avenues and just seeing kind of what was going to be the most efficient at the time.
Nice. Now, did you do, and I don't want to say typical, but the in the archery engineering space, when you talk to a gentleman like you, there's like, well, I sent my resume to Hoyt and I sent my resume to Matthews and I sent, so did you do the carpet bomb sending out resumes to everybody as well, or was the time frame, to where that didn't necessarily need to happen?
No, it's actually a way funnier story than that. Opposed to that, it was I believe it was maybe April, May, and I was just sitting back in my office and just trying to figure things out from a new business owner because I knew out of college I didn't want to go into the corporate type thing or I didn't want to go and get a standard job. It just wasn't something that I ever felt like I fit in that mold. I'd have felt like I was a square peg in a round hole because I come from my grandfather and my father, they're both self-made men in business. Grandpa's a huge inspiration to me, and he showed me what's possible with hard work and dedication. Obviously pursuing all of this business aspect, I was like, I did it for obviously my family and myself, but seeing his dedication and sacrifice, and my dad as well, to where I'm like, if you go out and you get up every day with a clear mission and a goal, and you work at that goal every day in and day out, and don't waver, like you can do anything. You can move mountains. You can accomplish those things with that skill set and putting those efforts in. So I was just had that mindset. So I knew I didn't want to go and just kind of be a cookie cutter 9 to 5. I just am not quite wired like that. And I knew myself well enough to know, okay, this isn't kind of this is this is me. I see things in a different way, which I'm not saying is anything special, but that's just my personality and that's what made me tick. And so I'm trying to figure this all out. And I'm sitting in my office and I get a call from an Ohio number. I'm like, that's kind of weird. But of course, any unknown numbers I was answering because I had some different leads out for freelance type work with whatever kind of would stick. And this incredibly energetic voice just comes beaming through the other end of the line. And it's like, hey, dude, what's up? This is Josh Fomore. I'm like, hey, man, how's it going? I had never met Josh before. We did not know each other. So that just honestly is how it started. It's not the I wish it was some other crazy, not that I wish, but it may seem like we just known each other forever. But he just cold called me one day and he's like, "Hey man, I have some problems that I'm working on, and I would love to, with your background and everything in professional archery and on the engineering side of things, like I would love to have a conversation with you." Fired me over an NDA, and the rest is history. Like we got that executed and went to work, and the ideas just started pouring out, and we found that our brains definitely interconnected from a level that really had a lot of benefits in complex problem solving. Is what engineering and product development is at its finest. It's just solving one problem. What's that problem? What's a derivative of that? And then continuing and just big picture to see how can we make this the best we possibly can, and a constant demand for excellence across the board. And that was April of would have been April of 2020, I believe. And then it's just been heck, what, 4 years since then already. We've been all these different projects and
Mhm.
avenues. So it's that's kind of the beginning, but I also don't want to jump too far ahead in the timeline of things for the sake of this podcast. But that's kind of how David Hauser went from shooting archery, shooting Vegas every year and all these events to that time frame where I saw the events were canceled, and it was something that I really had to make a decision, especially when things turn open back up. Events are back on. Everybody's like, "Hey guys, let's go." Events are live, and it was kind of a not a fork in the road, but it was a position that I had to make a decision of like, okay, am I gonna go all in on this business opportunity with using my mind and my creativity and what I've learned, or am I going to kind of go back to shooting events and traveling and going that path? And I chose to go all in on the company side of things, and I've never looked back, and it was incredibly happy that I did. It's just it was a perfect storm of events, and it was just it's not that I do it's not that I don't miss shooting, but it's just something that what I found in engineering and product development and design for a sport, especially hunting. I got into archery because of hunting. It wasn't that I wanted to shoot. Which I mean, heck, that's the story for probably most of us. It was bow hunter, diehard bow hunter. It's like, how can I hone my bow hunting abilities? How can I be a better hunter? Shoot better. And then I want to say I was probably maybe 10 or 11. My dad got me into archery and bought me my first bow, but he made me pay for half of it because he said, I refuse to buy this for you. And, and you go throw it in the closet and never shoot it. So I had been doing some weed eating and things at the time. 10-year-old me, dad would drag me to work with him and make me make me
That's
put in a
awesome.
day's work. And, it's a kind of the teaching event of like, okay, like, hard work sometimes it's hard, but look, there on the other side of that, there can be some, really incredible things and satisfaction of a, hard day's work. So, my hard-earned weed eating money, I pulled that out of my pocket and I paid for half of. I don't even remember what it was called, some bear archery bow from the local bow shop, and I started shooting that, and I was instantly hooked. I have a somewhat of an obsessive personality. When I get into something, I'm like all in. I'm like just like, how can I be the best version I possibly can be? And it was never a grandiose idea to be a professional archer. But then at the local sportsman's clubs, these guys had these like really decked out bows. It was like the year the Hoyt Alpha Elite came out. And I was like, what is that thing? It was this like really cool color. I'm like, I have to have one. So I ended up getting a target bow, started practicing, just consuming all kind of content online. Heck, I feel like, I was following you back then before I knew you, and everybody just trying to consume and see photos. I'm like, how's my form? And just learning and trial and error and taking little things. And and that kind of progressed to shooting, winning my first event in the young adult division or something in IBO, and just kind of shooting some events and then climbing through there to see, okay, this is really something I can make a go at with being a professional archer. And that was my dream. I wanted to just do the thing, and like everybody else, you see all these, like, I remember the first year what got me hooked on Vegas was the first year I ever went to the Vegas shoot. I watched Jesse Broadwater win. And I still tell him that story today because down at the first year was at the South Point Arena. I
Yep.
watched him win, and I'm like, I want to shoot down there someday. I was like a 12 or 13-year-old kid, and man, I was just infatuated with it. But that love for the sport and the competitive aspect, it was just something that being having more time at home and the ability to use creativity in my engineering degree, it was just something that I was like, okay, long term for my family, I'm like, this is a clear, logical. I want to run this out as far as I can
Sure.
on the engineering side. So that cold call from Josh really changed the trajectory of my life and where I was headed with the kind of that, as I mentioned before, that fork in the road of like go back, continue the professional archery thing, or kind of go all in on this product development side of things. And I definitely feel like I made the right call.
Absolutely. So I can remember back in those days, and I mean, we all thought that the shooting in 2010 to 2013, 14 was beyond. Now I think in 2024 we really understand what. I mean, Matthias just shot 90 X's at a tournament over in.
Yeah,
So when you
yeah,
see,
man, it's
yeah.
go
So
ahead.
I mean, when you and look, folks, I'm not shitting you. David could pound. Don't get it twisted. But when you sit and how old are you now?
27.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't even look 27. If you're listening, he doesn't even look 27. But when you sit back and you think about the scores and the things that were being shot when you first started coming up in this with 2013, 14, and you look at it now, and you look at the scores mainly that are being shot now versus back then, how does that register for a shooter of your caliber?
I mean, I feel like that's a great question, and and it's not that I want to say that I factored that into my decision making, but at the same time, you can go to Vegas and shoot 88, 89 X's, and you might not be the number one man in the shoot off. I mean, it's just what the level has achieved to, and whether I don't know what that is, whether it be I can't imagine it's too technology related. Obviously bows have continued to improve, but from like you said, from that 2014 to time frame to today, is it an exponential? Is it an order of magnitude better? I don't think so. As far as how well that bow is going to perform and how accurate it is it access to information? Are people just getting better and just refining that process? Uh, I'm not sure, but it's something that it'd be incredibly difficult to be pursuing that day in and day out. And you go and and I've shot some incredible rounds and not placed well, and that it's just one of those things that is definitely a very defeating outlook on that's how I'm going to pay my bills of you can shoot an absolute unbelievable round and it's just not enough.
Right.
Which and I'm not saying that as I want to take the easy way out and run away from that, but it's just the stark reality of the sport today that you can be an absolute killer out there with accuracy and everything perfect, and you cannot even get near that podium. You can make zero mistakes. You can go there, show up, you're squared away, your setup is refined. I mean, everything is just as good. And you shoot 110% of your ability, and you can get beat.
Right.
And you can get beat all year doing that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's kind of that's a difficult, that's definitely something that is factored into with the in my opinion like the climb, the plateau, and then in any sport. But I'm just like, man, if you do that, or if you have a couple years where you're just on fire and you just somebody's just better, and that's I'm okay. I'm happy to say that there's a lot of people that were better than me. I'm totally fine with that.
Sure.
I enjoyed it, but it's just something that it's an it's unbelievable. Like I still follow scores. I love to see everybody how they're doing, and it's absolutely amazing, especially from being able to in that arena with those individuals shooting shooting beside them and understanding the pressure and what you feel when you're down there. and just to see these scores just continue, the bar continues to raise. It's unbelievable, and it is incredibly hard to win. I mean, you see guys like you so many perfect rounds and do everything right, and you still lose. Like,
Right.
man, like that's it's unreal. I mean, hats off to all those individuals throwing those scores down. I mean, it's unbelievably impressive, and it's a very difficult sport to really to be. There's a lot of sports where you can be the man. You can be a Michael Jordan, nobody can touch you. But it's really difficult, I feel like nowadays, if you wanted to be like, I want to be a professional archer today. I'm starting right now in 2024. I'm going to go at it and I'm going to do this. Like, I don't know. It's going to be difficult. I feel like where you could single someone out and be like they're the like from today forward that they could just dominate because there are so many people that are incredible. I remember like some of the known pro, like, man, you'd have to shoot like 650, 60 up to even make the shoot off,
Right.
which, you know what I mean? Like, it's there's 30, 40 guys at every event that could win.
Right.
So it's like, and even if you have your best day, so like I said, hats off to them. I certainly enjoy seeing it. It's just something that it kind of my trajectory changed and away from that, and I'm really happy with the engineering side of things and trying to make products to see if we can raise that bar even higher. Now it's almost my competitive side. Of course, Josh and I and Sarah's competitive side of things have transitioned for me personally from that score to, how can we get that competitive edge for the consumer and for a product that we can create and, continue to raise the bar amongst what, those goods that we're making to make people better bow hunters. At the end of the day, we want everyone to harvest that animal lifetime. You get that one opportunity. We would just want to make the sport better, make better products, find the envelope that I always saw being pushed and was chasing in the competitive side of things. And we want to take that envelope and continue to push it and raise the bar and the product and the manufacturing side, which, so that competitive nature is still in me. I've just channeled it in a different arm of the sport per se.
Absolutely. So let me ask this. And so I'm going to lay out the same scenario, and it's going to apply to both business and shooting.
Okay.
And it's a glass ceiling. And so
Yeah.
when I think on the competitive side, before Dave Cousins came around, the scores were in the mid 540s for field, and that was cool. Dave Cousins came around and started shooting, 550 in field back then was huge. Dave Cousins comes along, starts dropping 553s, 555s, and people are like, oh my God.
Yep.
And then other people started doing it. Well, and then Jesse Broadwater came around, and Jesse's like, that's cool. Here's some 560s for you. And then, yeah, right. For those of you wondering, 560 is perfect. And then guess who starts doing that too? Dave Cousins. So Dave Cousins raised the bar to the 555 ish. Jesse raises it to the 560 ish. Dave follows. And
Hmm.
so I see a lot of that in the target world, like indoors. I can remember when Chance Bobeff started coming in and he's shooting these freaking 3-hole targets down there at indoor tournaments, and everyone's like, what? But he wasn't always winning, of course, but he won a lot. But I think that glass ceiling is something that as a shooter and in business, so we're gonna I want to get both of your answers on this, of course, but that a lot of times people just adjust to the status quo. Now, by status quo, people, we're talking about the best scores here. So we're not talking about average. But, well, yeah, people are shooting this many X's. That's what we do until someone comes along and goes, that's cool. I
Watch
can
this.
exactly. And then all of a sudden, people are looking around like, oh, shit. Oh, I guess we can. And then they start doing it too. You can apply that to the women's compound side with Paige and these women that are now shooting. It's ridiculous. I mean,
Very.
they 10, 15 years ago, didn't happen that way. You would have one. You would have Jamie Van Atta or Erica Jones or whatever. Now you have a handful of women that are literally shooting damn near men's scores. And so that glass ceiling on the shooting side, I believe it also transfers over. And this is, obviously the Beast Broadhead will be part of this conversation. But talk a little bit about from the shooting side that theory that the glass ceiling, as these plateaus happen, once someone breaks through that glass ceiling, opens it up for everyone. on the shooting side, and then of course we'll transition over to what you guys have accomplished with Beast as well.
Yeah, 100%. And, a great analogy with that example was like the 4 minute mile. That was theoretically impossible. It was, mathematically impossible. There was no way that the human biomechanics could carry the body around the lap 4 times under 4 minutes. It was absolutely impossible until somebody did it. And then it wasn't impossible. And I don't know the stat, but then multiple people followed very shortly after because it was shown that is possible. And I think that maybe that kind of ties into what we talked about a few minutes ago of, what has happened since that 2014 timeframe with the scores you see now. I think it's that same analogy. It's like, you go to shoot a 30X like every single time to be at the, 30Xs, that was like obviously done, but I don't think you saw nearly as many 30s. Like when I first started going to the
Oh,
Vegas shoot, you'd see, that $1,000 a day or whatever, like, one guy would get all the money or maybe two people would split it. Now, like, I don't even know if they do it anymore in Vegas, but like there'd be 4, 5, 6 guys shooting 30Xs in a day. And it's just like, but I think it's just because that the competition, like you said, demanded that
right.
and made ensured that, that one person kind of demanded everyone else raise to that level, that Dave and Jesse analogy. And I think that it's incrementally increased. However, the format that we see has stayed, consistent. So
Right.
I think that it may be that glass ceiling has reached a point with the format, the 20-yard Vegas face with the X ring size, the 10 ring size, the distance, that as that glass ceiling was
Point.
broken and then reestablished, that the only thing that hasn't changed is the formats. That's why you see everything on such the high side of now it just has to be optimized with
Great point.
perfection because of everything else has been pretty consistent, but that with the format side of things, but it's just the that glass ceiling and that's a great, like you said, stepping stone into the business side of things, which is kind of where I definitely want to preface this with kind of like how, the Beast project started. Because I think that's important as we kind of transition into that aspect.
Okay.
Um, as shortly after I mentioned that cold call where, Josh just called me out of the blue, and we started collaborating, and I was actually just working for Bum Archer. I didn't, just come on as an owner. It was something that I was just an employee and kind of going in, doing the product design development and whatever kind of came across my desk. And a few months into that, I want to say it was in February of 2021 timeframe. So obviously, mid 2020, a couple smaller projects we were working on back and forth. Nothing that we had brought to the market. I think one of the first projects that I did start to finish was actually the peep tuner that we still offer today for optimizing peep rotation and fixing that age-old problem we all have with you need a quarter twist in your string, but that's of course impossible. So that was one of the first projects. So we kind of started with things like that, and then the Broadhead project came across in February of 21, early 2021, and it was in that time frame. Like I said, I just been working, you just kind of normal day to day, and I was just could see where this company could go. And working with Josh is we bring out the best qualities in each other from a product development side because of an unwavering belief in things being possible. Our favorite thing we always say is like if they can fly a helicopter on Mars or Elon can catch a rocket ship with giant chopsticks, I feel like an idiot for being like, oh, poo poo me, I can't figure this out.
Right.
Sitting at my desk with a, SolidWorks modeling program that they would have killed for in 1980, where you have a question, I can show you in 20 minutes what it looks like. So it was just that unwave we were just worked so well together, and throughout that process when the Broadhead kind of came across to where it was something that we did not have it anywhere near refined. The technology was nothing near what it is today, and kind of when that kind of came across, it was right around the time I believe my son Caden was born. Kelly and I had him in June of 2021. Around that time frame, Josh was like, look man, he's like, your knowledge base from all of your time shooting professional archery and everything stored in your brain with your engineering side and your commitment to the brand. He's like, I want, to offer you to come on as an owner instead of just an employee and, do this Broadhead project with me. Well, I was like, I couldn't say yes fast enough for that opportunity. And I wanted to absolutely take that as far as we possibly could because it was just, it takes so much to make something great from a product side of things. So it was that what I was bringing to the table. It was, just am forever grateful for that opportunity that we worked our absolute tails off to transition to what it is today. But so kind of the preface the side of things with the glass ceiling, there was many times throughout this project we worked on it every day for 3 years straight, and we failed every single day. I mean, we had after a year and a half, we've been grinding it out. I mean, it was time, effort, capital, you name it. We were like just getting after it with prototypes and samples. And we had it, we could have taken it to market. Him and Sarah were getting ready to go to Tanzania on one of their hunts, one of those awesome safaris to go on. And, we had some samples, but it was just like there was just something missing. The design, the aesthetic wasn't quite there. And the technology was something that, we could have launched it and been like, this is cool and everything, and then we'll give you guys a 2.0. But it was just we both knew without saying that like there's more that can become of this. So it was that after a year and a half, everything went right in the trash can. Control, delete everything, move to the recycle bin, and start it over. And that was hyper difficult. It was something that we had put so much time and effort into that, and to just throw the trash was tough because but there was that glass ceiling analogy. I'm like, we could have stopped and been like, just launched it, put that out on the market. We knew that it wasn't perfect, and we, have an unwavering demand for excellence, and it's just something that it just wasn't ready. So there's no way it was going on the market with our name and face on the package until it was perfect. And I have to give Josh a ton of credit with that, with his vision of his success in business obviously resonates across all businesses, but especially with this is just like he had an unwavering belief that we can accomplish it. And I'm like, I'm in it with you, man. Let's ride this out, and we're just gonna continue to push the envelope and just finding a way to not take no for an answer. We got shut down for like a year and a half, 2 years from our vendors of like, things that weren't possible, or they just weren't willing to. No one had ever asked for things that specific or that way or with that process. And it's like, well, can you at least try? Like, can we try? Can we fail? Can we collaborate? What did we learn and then improve it? And got to give our vendors credit, man. They stuck in there with us to, they saw the vision of our goal is lofty, but build the biggest broadhead company in the world in under 5 years.
Right.
And that takes the best of everything from all over the world. I mean, we wanted the absolute pinnacle of every product because it was a long list of things that we had happen as bow hunters because we're just trying to make bow hunting better for everybody.
Right.
We want everyone to have the best probability of harvesting the animal of a lifetime. So all of those things that were just kind of tied together of things that we had seen in failures in other products, and we're never ones that we're going to say, anything in specific of that list of things aspects, but we just knew that there were things to be optimized that just really didn't see a ton of innovation in the last decade or so. And we're like, this is something very special with this technology that we were seeing with our testing. We're like, we have to take this as far as we possibly can. And it was just continuing to raise the bar. It's like, okay, we get a sample, is it good? Yeah, it's pretty good, but it's not great. And then it's like one up it, and man, that's a hard pill to swallow. Sometimes you're like, man, we just worked on this for months, and then we got to go back and be like, it's pretty good and it works, but we need it to be better. And it's just like, it takes a very, very from manufacturing side that was my first lens into a lot of that. It takes some special vendors too to stick there with you because they're like, man, this is like a lot of effort for they had no idea if we meant what we said, So it was just but it was just raising the bar and just making sure that it was as good as it possibly could be and not taking no for an answer. And now you find us here.
There you go. So let me ask this. And well, first of all, folks, full disclosure, I've been seeing this broadhead since Josh, like from the giddy up. And I'll just,
You've been in it with us, Greg.
oh, you're right. Yeah, exactly. We're in the trenches, but I can tell you right now, from the very first time Josh sent me one of these to look at to now is not even close to the same product. And it looks a million times better. Not that looks matter that much, but it's way cooler looking now than it was. And functionality wise, it's off the chain. So there's I'm trying to figure out the best way to fuck it. So there's a elephant in the room here that I want to discuss. And B success is amazing. The product is amazing. Everything that's being done with the company and the product is stellar. There's some other opportunities that have helped fuel that success. And this goes to, and this is for those wondering, if you want, if you look at any beast broadhead and you look at every single, there's a fly in here. Yeah, that just happened. Um, the every single part that you see on the beast broadhead, the kid you're looking at in the black beast shirt, he sourced it and he ordered it. He spec'd it, he ordered it, he designed it. That's all David. But here's the thing, and I don't want to mention any names because anyone that knocks down anyone else's product to promote their own needs a better product of their own.
100%.
But there's a phenomenon happening. It's not a phenomenon, it's a trend. There's a trend happening in our industry right now. And that is outsourcing. And I don't mean just outsourcing for a part or two. I mean getting peg ready product in this beast in the broadhead category from China. And some of those companies and those private equity firms that are doing that have experienced what happens to companies like that. And so the timing of beast, you couldn't script it any better. You have other broadhead companies that are well-known names that have been purchased or sold or decided to outsource 100%, and they're having some other issues. And here comes beast. And so the timing just literally, you couldn't have written an email and everyone followed the timing instructions any better for what beast is doing. And so with that being said, let's go, not the little screw that goes in top or not the stud that goes in the bottom, not that kind of stuff. But all of the beast broadhead is not made in one place. It's assembled in one place, and that's Utah. But that shit comes from all over the planet. That's
Correct.
not that's not normal. I'm just going to be honest with you. I've been doing this for a hot minute. That shit ain't normal. People want peg ready stuff. And for those of you wondering, Bomar Archery does get peg ready nose buttons and peep tuners from AAE in Prescott Valley, Arizona. American made, son. So don't get that twisted. Even though it's a little plastic part, that shit's made in America. So beast specific, explain to people, because I just don't think that, and on the packaging it says sourced globally, assembled in America, but I don't think people understand, because I think people are so conditioned to just, oh, well, they just buy those from here.
Yeah.
Not the case with beasts. So explain how and why that took place. And secondly, that's not the cheap way to do it.
Not at all. It's yeah, but to your first point, and the mission was to build the best broadhead in the world. And to do that, you need the best components. You need the absolute best of everything. And I touched on this briefly with our vendors, but to dive in a little bit more in the weeds on that of what really separates beasts was we had a list of things that we wanted, we didn't want, etc. One of the things on that list of wants in that column was the sharpest and the best broadhead blade that we could find on the entire globe, wherever that may be, whomever's making it. And we knew from our experience with broadheads over the last decade or two, was Lutz blades in Germany. They are the pinnacle, the best of the best. I mean, undeniable. You ask any archery shop owner, anybody familiar, they're the best. So it was something that it was Lutz 100%. That's who we want. Really, we didn't even really entertain much else. Like, they're the best. We want them.
Right.
So I sent them a cold email. Hey guys, just kind of going back and forth.
Hi, I'm
I am
Dave.
so made. Yeah, hi. Thanks for we're gonna build the biggest broadhead company in the world. We don't have anything made yet, but I promise you, we're gonna do it. They probably get a few dozen of those every day. But it
Right.
was something that our point of contact over there. He's become a great part of our friend group and the brand, and he stuck in there for well over a year and a half before we ever even got a single sample, because we knew they were the best. I mean, it was bar none. We sent them back and forth, and trying to just, snapping your fingers, and this stuff just doesn't happen. When it's the best, most complex process, like this stuff takes immense amount of time. So even once you get past the point of having a sample that you're like, okay, this works, let's go. It is just there's so many more hoops to jump through. And the big thing was we wanted a curved blade. We didn't want a straight blade. We wanted a curved blade because the curved blade has an optimum slicing ability versus a straight blade. There's lots of studies from MIT, Harvard. They've done all kind of tests with knives and other with any type of shear force across mediums to where the curvature, the way that the force is concentrated, it's why the end of a scalpel is rolled up or a chef's knife is not straight. All of those things are, crossovers of why we knew that a curved blade was better, but we wanted to figure out why. And we asked lots like we want our blade to be curved because I won't bore everyone with the engineering backstory, but a curved better has optimum slicing power over straight blade time and time again. So we asked Let's we could do a curved blade. No, sorry, can't do a curved blade. Why can't you do a curved blade? And go back and forth and just refuse to take no for an answer. And it was, it was cost prohibitive. It was at the end of the day, as
Oh,
you mentioned before.
hold on. Not just a curved blade. It's not like if you wanted them to make an 8-inch curved knife, they couldn't. You need to be a little bit more specific on what kind of blade you're talking about here in conjunction with the curved blade.
Fair enough. So the way that Beast works is that the geometry on the blade is hyper detailed, and that was we had hundreds and hundreds of versions and iterations to get to where we are today with our stored energy in the ferrule that I'll kind of touch on with our spring bender with the same concept of the blades. But the geometry on the blade is hyper specific and all engineered and designed in a very specific way to interact with our blade retention system. So that is the way in which our blades lock in the stowed position. So in flight, a beast is only 0.66 inches at a cross section. So in flight, that's the overall width. A lot of expandables, 3/4 of an inch to an inch. The smaller in flight cross section maximize or minimizes drag and then maximizes aerodynamics.
Right.
Additionally, with that curvature of the blade, you can keep that narrower in-flight profile. And that wasn't why we wanted a curved blade, but that was another inherent benefit that the curvature of the blade allows the blades to curl back towards the center line of the arrow shaft, which also allows for a smaller cross section. Especially if it's a straight blade, the longer the blade gets, the wider it gets in the stowed position because that distance has to go somewhere.
Right.
So the curvature of the blade is one thing, but the geometry on that blade, there were
What are
so
you
many
looking at
back
over
and
there?
forth.
What do you keep
What's
looking
that?
at over there? What do you keep looking at over there?
Nothing. Oh, I have a pack of broadheads here,
All right.
actually.
Just checking. All right.
But so the way that the our blade retention system works and with all the beasts is, as I mentioned, the geometry on the blade is hyper specific, so that way it interlocks with our blade retention system. So it's all stainless steel inside the ferrule, no bands, no collars, no plastic. We took all of that. That was in the do not want column. Very specific, in bold, highlighted in red. We do not want any of those aspects.
Right.
So the geometry of this blade is incredibly specific with the curved edge. So back and forth with Lutz, man, it was quite the process to get to where we could even get a sample. And then once we got a sample, then we went back and forth and really refined that geometry. And with their prestige in the name, I mean, they've been in the blade game for well over 100 years. So they have a specialized material. These are stainless steel blades. It's alloyed over in Germany that it's all the properties are all optimized for holding an incredible edge, getting incredibly sharp. And the hardness of these blades with the process, they actually go through a cryogenic process where during the heat treat to allow them to have an incredibly high hardness, but not get brittle, as you can see sometimes. That's normally a give and take and a trade off, but they have their processes dialed in so much that they can really make the best and sharpest broadhead blade in the world. And these are the sharpest mechanical broadhead blades on the market, third party tested. And that was another aspect of we wanted the sharpest, best blade possible because at the end of the day, the animal deserves it. As hunters in our ethics, we want to have the most efficient exploration of that animal for our harvest. So the sharpness of the blade and the material with Lutz, their 9-step process they all go through. Everything pound for pound with a Lutz blade is just head and shoulders above whom their competitors are in the blade space because they are just known. So we're like, we have to go, Germany, they're known for, German engineering. There's so many benefits that we're like, we have to have this in the beast. There's no scenario where we're not going to use Lutz. So, hats off to them. Shout out to those guys for their efforts as well and sticking in there with us while we went back and forth to make the blade what it is today and all the beasts that hit the market.
Yeah, I mean, and that kind of goes fits. Um, yeah, but so and it kind of goes back to what I just said about some other brands outsourcing and creating this perfect storm for Beast. Beast would have been massive because of the technology, but specifically to Lutz, dude, 20 years ago, everybody used Lutz. Everybody.
But I mean, they're expensive, and it's something that, again, like you said, like us sourcing all these parts all over the world. I mean, our springs come from the UK from a factory. They make springs for Lamborghini, Ferrari, Aston Martin. I mean, this spring on a conference call with them, they say the spring in a Beast Broadhead is the most advanced spring that they make or maybe have ever created because we need such high amounts of load with force output in such a small spring
Right.
that theoretically, when they ran the calculations, they told us it was impossible, that it could not be done. We're like, would you guys please just try? What can you do? Can we push the limit? And we just kept the same glass ceiling scenario, ratcheting up the force and be like, okay, we tried this. What about that? Same thing with them. I mean, it was just mathematically, they said that it was impossible to create that type of force output from our spring desire. But I mean, they pulled through for us, and that is where all the stored energy that we have in our ferrule is because of that advanced spring technology. It's not a spring you get from a hardware store. I mean, this
Right.
spring is goes through 7+ steps with it's so incredibly hyper specific with their tolerances and process. I mean, it is absolutely unbelievable what we put into just the spring. However, the spring and the blades are two of the most critical components of the beast broadhead and what makes it so revolutionary. So getting all those components from all over the world, bringing them all back to Utah to assemble them where everyone's hand tested, quality control, I mean, all that done in house, it is something that it was what it took to make the best product. And, Josh and I are on the call with these vendors. We're the ones talking with them, going back and forth, problem solving. It's just something that it just to have that type of connection with your vendors when our face is on the back of the package that it is so important to have that, and it's something that I feel like sometimes it can get lost in maybe some other companies, and hey, to each their own. If that's what works for them, that's great, but kind of some of your analogies where it's maybe from a consumer side the quality doesn't meet there's a quality trade-off at times when whomever may be taking care of ordering or dealing with the parts coming in and quality control. They're I mean, at the end of the day, they may just work there, and that's nothing wrong with them not having that intimate connection. But as owners of the company, we have that to an even higher standard because of the fact that we put our name on that, and we are on those calls with the vendors, and we have such a detailed connection to ensure every single beast that is in everyone's quiver is to the standard that would be in our own. Because I mean, people want dangerous stuff. I mean, Josh has killed a dozen Cape Buffalo with
Right.
beast. That's a life
Right.
or death scenario sometimes. So it's just something that we just want to deliver the best product in the world and the best broadhead we possibly can make. And to do that, there's a lot of aspects of those extra efforts that we have put in on our side that, as you said, may sometimes from a pricing perspective, these really high quality parts aren't cheap. But we're not going to sacrifice on quality in that regard, which that's everybody may have their own opinion, but we want to deliver the best product, and that will never waver. And we demand excellence from everyone, ourselves included, and that's what it took to get Beast where it is today. And this 3.5, almost 4 year long journey where we just launched, in 2023. A massive shout out to my sweet wife who stuck in there with full support throughout. Because man, it's looking back, it's crazy. I
Right.
mean, it was the dream of achieving and getting even to have anything on the market that one person buys and have your fingerprints over that product where they take out and hunt to where we sold a year's worth of inventory in like 45 days in the summer. So it was just unbelievable support. I have to thank everybody listening who's purchased a pack of Beast broadheads and for just believing in us and like just the American dream. I mean, I'm literally living I have to look around sometimes and almost pinch myself because of like, I mean, but it was hard work. I mean, it was incredibly difficult. There was no guarantees when you go into this, a couple years deep and you have no idea if you're going to get there, but you just keep your head down and keep after it. And I mean, massive, like I said, that's why I had to throw that shout out to Kelly for the massive support and all of us supporting each other, at Bowma Archery and Beach, easily one of us, Josh, Sarah, myself could have been like, this isn't working. Like, we got to try something different, or like, and easily, any time could have pulled the plug. But it was just we all knew that we can do this, we can accomplish this, and you can't give up because in 50 years from now, you look back and be like, man, if you were right there, about that big breakthrough, you don't know when it's going to come. So every day, Groundhog Day, wake up, work, get kicked in the face, fail, do it again, learn,
Right.
rinse, repeat, and just continue to do that over and over. And that's any product that we make is going to have that same. We have a ton of cool stuff in the lineup for 2025 and lots in the future, but that's just the same outlook we're going to take to all of it, to where it's just complex problem solving and one problem leading to another and potential solution and going back and forth and just ensuring that it's just the best product in the world that we can possibly create, and it doesn't leave our desk in our control until we know that we have achieved that, because our customers deserve it. And
Right.
I want that as a customer, and I want every one of our customers to know that that's what they get when they support our company. Like, we're designing it, we're working on them, we're pushing the envelope and trying to see where some innovation is stifled, because like I said, broadheads expandables hasn't had a major innovation since the early 2000s. So
Right.
it's just an aspect that applying that and kind of circling back to getting those products that we have such an intimate relationship with the sourcing of them, not getting a peg ready part, because then it also holds our vendors and all of us to a higher standard of like, we have to know that everything meets our standard. And they've been rock stars for us, and we couldn't be happier to have everyone on the team that we do.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, so forever, I mean, even as kids, we were told, don't load all your magazines and just let them sit for years because it messes the spring up and you might get a jam in your rifle or your pistol or whatever. Okay, cool. One of the things that I really want you to talk about, and I get this question a lot and I've wondered it. I mean, you've answered it for me privately, but I know the springs are made in the same factory as Lamborghini and Ferrari, and that's cool. But explain how a spring, I don't care if the spring is this big or this big, can stay compressed. Because if you buy a not that packs a broadhead, not that packs a beast, are sitting on shelves for years at a time right now. You can't even really make them fast enough. But how in the hell is that tiny little spring staying compressed in the closed position for an undetermined amount of time and then still function the way that the broadhead is designed to function? Talk about that a little bit, because I think that kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, that there's a spring in there. And when you look at that broadhead, I was going to say, look at the broadhead in the package, but one of them's open. But if you look at a closed beast broadhead, that spring's compressed.
Yeah.
And you drop that behind your toolbox for 2-3 years and you go to clean it out and you're like, holy shit, there's a pack of beasts. That broadhead is still going to perform like you just bought it. So talk about that, because I think that's just wild.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic point. And that was something that came up during the design phase of having to be aware. As you said, we're very thankful and at the overwhelming support that we really can't make them fast enough. But obviously, our vendors being able to, we increase order quantity so that way we can continue to meet demand. But at the same time, the parts get to Utah, we assemble them, hand test them. They get packed and then may be shipped to our fulfillment center. And like you said, there can be a time frame, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. You buy a pack of broadheads and you shoot $1 a year and you got four broadheads left in your quiver. Well, then you might shoot another buck the next year, and et cetera. I haven't shot a buck in a while, so this really applies to me. But that was something that a huge question that I asked our vendor over there was, these are going to be compressed for 1, 2, 3 years, maybe longer. Like, we have to ensure that, because any material has limits, whatever that may be, and just being aware of that in the design phase is massively important. So I'm like, what's this spring going to do in those scenarios? And we've just crunched the numbers and went back and forth on the design to ensure that the stresses that the spring experience, because of course mathematically in their software it shouldn't be possible to achieve the load that we do,
Right.
but to ensure the stress limits were always going to be under a threshold that could cause any potential relaxation is the technical term, but essentially relaxation just means that if you take a spring and you compress it and then you let go of it, is it going to come back to the same length once you let go of it? And is it going to output the same force when it does? So that was something that they actually have a software and this really detailed finite element analysis of this spring material that they already test, and they take every single one to a compressed state and all their 7-step process associated, but they have a software that they can map out like a 10,000 hour compression, and they can output the data of if it's compressed for 10,000 hours, what is going to happen once you let go of that. And that they, after that test was ran, that they can predict what is going to occur for essentially an indefinite period of time beyond that 10,000 hours. And our spring has the properties past all those tests with flying colors that you have a beast that it's locked for 2, 3, 4, however many years, that when that broadhead hits an animal after that compressed time, all of the data is going to ensure that that spring efficiency is going to be just as it was when you took it out of the package for the first time, however many years ago, which is why we put so much effort in selecting that vendor. Because the same thing with, okay, you guys make springs for Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Ferrari, etc. You know, I don't have a Ferrari, but whoever may have a Ferrari, I doubt they drive it every day. So same scenario, that car has to be ready. That
Right.
it may sit in the garage for multiple years, and that a lot of these springs are used in the engine componentry. I'm also not a gearhead, so I don't want to assign any terms to where they're used. But same scenario, that spring is in a compressed state, and then on demand it has to be ready right now. So that
Right.
was why we went to the automotive sector in this very high end spring manufacturer. So then that way, they assured us, and we can assure our vendors that, or our customers that a broadhead's locked multiple years. Customer service. I was doing a lot of customer service response emails there for a while. I answered that question many times. That you don't have to store them in the open position. That it's designed to be closed for years. And when that spring hits, that broadhead hits, that spring is going to fire those blades with that same maximum efficiency and output to harvest that animal exactly as it would that very first day that we assembled in Utah and hand tested it. 5 years later, you're going to get the same exact result. And we demanded that from our vendor to ensure that there was no scenario we're going to be like, okay, we can, after a couple of years, like we have to know. Even done internal testing to replicate to ensure that all of those things checked out, and all the variables that we could account for, because it's so important. Back to, we just want to make bow hunting better, have the best experience for hunters. We're all hunters at heart. We love to hunt, and it's just something that it has to be the best in every single aspect of the product. And that's where our spring technology truly is advanced spring technology. It's not marketing. It's
Right.
not fancy word gymnastics. I mean, this spring is so advanced from the ability to be compressed, stay there for years, and then return to its essentially the open state of the broadhead with maximum output of force, to ensure that those blades are going to be slicing everything we want at the full cutting diameter through hide, tissue, tendons, organ, and then only be able for the blade to retract and pivot inward around anything, i.e., bone in the animal that would have to ensure that kinetic energy is maximized and penetration is it maximized to the highest ability.
Right. And so that was the next thing I was going to talk about is there's been a broadhead or a couple broadheads that have claimed to have some form of bone avoidance of some kind, but there's never been a broadhead on the market that can both blades can. And with some, if you have one that does this, yes, one side can pivot around a bone, but it actually makes the other one go out farther. So it can help on one side and hurt on the other. So with the beast, because of these springs, because of the things that you guys have developed inside, one or both blades can literally fold rearward to avoid, like if you shoot perfectly in between two ribs, both blades can literally fold back, go around, and then open back up inside of the cavity. That's redonkulous. And so you talked about retained momentum, which is really what it's all about. And I know folks are like, well, I want to crush that bone. Broken bones,
Doesn't kill the animal.
that doesn't kill deer, bro. I
All
don't care.
about what you hit is what you cut.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like, oh, just shoot for the shoulder. All you're going to do is make that deer limp and then maybe die in the winter because it can't feed itself. But you're not killing it with that. Cutting
Yeah.
bone or crushing bone does not harvest the animal for you anyway. Maybe it does for the coyotes a month later, but archery kills via hemorrhage. So I don't care if I ever break a bone, but talk a little bit about that bone avoiding technology, because that part in and of itself, yes, the blades are ridiculously sharp. Lutz, folks went away from Lutz because they're expensive. And with everybody outsourcing and private equity firms, they're trying to squeeze every drop they can, and they're just not going to pay for that level of quality. So the blades are amazing. All the spring technology is incredible. But now I want you to kind of focus on the functionality of that recipe. And that's really what it is the beast is it's a recipe. And
Yeah.
so and
Took
so
3.5 years to get it right too.
what I'm saying, that's what I'm saying. And so talk about the functionality of of not just the bone avoiding technology, but the blades uh opening period.
Yeah, for sure. So, and that's where kind of back to the blade retention system is that obviously in the stowed position, expandable broadhead. If anybody that is new to the broadhead space, listens for the first time, expandable broadhead in flight in a stowed position, the smaller cross section we mentioned earlier, on impact, designed to deployment tabs that induce outward leverage, rotate the blades to the full and open position to maximize the size of the wound channel. So the way the beast works is that on impact, the deployment tab once they experience 1.2 pounds of force, both blades are going to fire simultaneously at over 940 miles an hour from that stored energy and the power stroke of the spring driving upward and rotating the blades outward. So, on impact, whenever that broadhead is now in that full open position, so the spring's compressed when it's stowed, the blade retention system, all the stainless steel components we talked about earlier, outward leverage is induced on the blade. Now both blades fire open from the spring returning to its free length or extended position. So now that's what's holding the blades in the open position. So with any our finger protectors or a gloved hand, the blades can be compressed and you can feel the stored energy in the ferrule, which is incredibly significant from our advanced spring technology. So because those blades can bias on that spring, what that allows for in the event of bone contact with one or both blades, the blades can actually retract and compress that spring down, which folds the blades into the closer to the retracted position. So then that way to penetrate past that bone, and as soon as that bone is no longer contacting the blade because that spring is trying to return to its extended position, that's going to fire both blades back open in the soft tissue within a quarter of an inch on the opposite side of that bone when it penetrates beyond it. So your analogy earlier was great with the ribs. So if you split two ribs perfectly and your left blade hits a rib closer to the back of the rib cage and your right blade hits a rib closer to the front of the rib cage, both blades are going to retract down. So then that way it's not going to break those ribs, but the blades compress the spring down so that way they can push or clear that bone essentially without breaking it. And as soon as they penetrate past the bone, they both fire back open to the extended position. So what makes that so unique is, as Greg you mentioned, the retained momentum or maximizing penetration with reserving your kinetic energy. Because normally, when that blade contacts that bone, in order for it to move past that bone, it's going to have to break it. And obviously, all of that force to break that bone then has to be robbed essentially from your arrow, from the kinetic energy you have on impact. So breaking of that bone is going to massively diminish your kinetic energy, especially on a scapula hit or any contact that with the bone avoiding technology with the blades being. Sorry, Greg,
We're good.
anybody that's
Continue.
not watching. Greg's his cat is climbing him like a tree, and he's anybody that knows him does not. He doesn't strike me as a cat guy, but as I was saying that the bone avoiding technology, because those blades can pivot and compress that spring inward, maximize your kinetic energy, it doesn't break the bone and allows for maximizing hemorrhage, which is what Greg, of course, touched on. That's what kills animals with bow hunters. So the sharper the blade in the cavity, the more hemorrhage you're going to see as well that we found from all of our testing. If you cut yourself with a dull knife versus a sharp knife, the sharp knife cut is going to bleed exponentially more. And it's because you're slicing instead of tearing tissue. There's a ton of studies, and I won't bore everyone with the details, but the sharpness of the blades in the cavity results in incredibly maximized hemorrhage, which results in the animal expiring faster. Shorter track job is what we all want. But also because of that bone avoiding technology, because the blades can retract inward and not break that bone, it allows for the edge to also be retained, which what I mean by that, it allows the blade to stay sharper longer. On the way into the animal, your broadhead opens and you break two ribs on the way in. It's just like taking your pocket knife across a cinder block because that bone is very dense and difficult to break. So that edge is essentially smashing and grinding along the edge of that bone to break it. So then the rest of the wound channel is essentially being created with a blade that is already has an inferior or compromised edge because the bone damages or rolls the edge. Also, a lot of times, blade hardness has a lot to do with that with edge retention. Our cryogenic process that left us on our blades to get to a very high hardness that exceeds what you see on a lot of other product is allows for that edge to be retained from the quality of the Lutz blade, which is holds it to a higher standard. But that compromised with the bone avoiding technology being able to pivot inward around that bone and then redeploy, it doesn't damage the edge like we saw with other products that we had all used for years and years. So that was just something that came from the testing that that edge being retained from that sharpness with not having to break through that bone has massive benefits in the cavity to maximize penetration. The sharper your broadhead is, the deeper it's going to go. Of course, I'm talking in context of soft tissue, but
Right.
it's going to slice better, so it's going to penetrate further. But also, that sharper blade in the cavity results in massive amounts of increased hemorrhaging, which is another benefit that we learned throughout the testing phase from the technology that maximizes that penetration, but also has all these upstream benefits of the blade edge retention and maximizing kinetic energy and penetration. All of that together is what really makes this technology so special. That again, 3.5 years, everybody. I mean, it was quite the grind to get it to where it is today. But all of that compiles together with Beast, with our blade retention system, all the stainless components in the ferrule, our incredibly advanced spring technology, the way that the blades interact with that spring at the deployed position to be able to retract and press the spring, and then as soon as it clears that bone, fire back open to that maximum cutting diameter.
Right.
All of those are what we have packed into every single Beast broadhead that we're putting out on the market.
So I'll tell you something that is wild for me. And you're going to need to explain this. You already said it takes about 1.2 pounds to deploy the beast, and then like 17 pounds or so to close those blades. And so I'm just going to say two words to you. And then I need you to explain in smart people talk why the beast does what it does. You ready? Ballistics gel.
Figured this would come up.
One, two, three, go. I mean, I look, everybody, and look, if you have a fixed blade or you have the kind of, mechanical that, doesn't have this kind of feature in it, yeah, sure, ballistics gel, sure. But with Beast, ballistics gel's viscosity. Anyway, I'm going to let you explain. Go.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that, like I said, I'm not surprised this came up, but I'm honestly glad it did because it's something that ballistics gel is something that I don't know when it came onto the archery testing world, but ballistics gel, last time I checked, deer are not comprised of ballistics gel, so it's not an accurate representation of an animal, and the density is completely different. The viscosity of the ballistics gel is completely different than an animal. Ballistics gel. I'm not a ballistics gel timeline historian expert, but many times you saw it with, shockwave bullet travel through with FBI testing in early Mythbuster days, and people are like, oh, we should maybe shoot that with an arrow. But ballistics gel, especially when you watch it, the density of it is just so wildly different than an animal, and it's a consistent medium. What I mean by that is the entire way through that ballistics gel, it's the same density and viscosity where lung tissue, hide, liver, blood, all of these things. And again, that blood creates, a wet environment inside of that animal. So a uniform density material ballistics gel that when the arrow hits it, all that energy is you see the ballistics gel moving, and that movement is transfer of energy as well from the arrow dissipated by the gel. So it's just something that it's not an accurate representation or a medium for a pound for pound, efficiency test of a ballistics gel, as you said. You want to shoot a fixed blade into it or a bullet or something like that, but that is not going to give the same result as you're going to see on a living animal. And we designed and optimized every aspect of the beast with the spring rate, the force to open, the force to close the blade through track down. All of this was done on hundreds of real life animal tested on real hunts, real broadheads. And I mean, everything was done to maximize for a real living, breathing animal. So the ballistics gel is it's just really a no factor in our opinion of it's not a fair representation of a what you're going to experience on a real animal. So it's just not something that, again, the industry likes to use that as a representative, but it's just something that is, it doesn't have any merit when you kind of break down
Right.
the immense obvious differences between, ballistics gel and an animal.
So as the engineer, I could ask Josh this too, as the guy who also developed it and also owns it. But as the engineer, as the smarty pants guy, when you see video of a beast broadhead hit ballistics gel, and it opens for, I don't know, half inch, and then when you see the ballistic gel start to close those blades back down and the wound channel get narrower going through the ballistic gel, don't you literally go, "Yep, that's exactly what I engineered it to do."
It's because, of course, as you mentioned on the spring force on the blades, it was not designed for the medium being ballistics gel. The medium for maximum efficiency is organ tissue on a living, breathing animal. So, to your point, yes, we all of the calculations, all the testing, all the data is to maximize what you're going to do in the field harvesting an animal,
Right.
not a test that has no representation of what you're going to see in a real application because it just doesn't. There's no correlation. I already touched on it with the medium being wildly different, and we wanted something that's going to maximize your benefits on a real animal, and other tests that you can do in your backyard. Really don't apply because we wanted it to be the best on an animal and to be the fastest expiration of that animal you're trying to harvest. And that's all we care about as the owners, as hunters ourselves. The results on animals are what we care about, and that's what that we see our customers see, and anybody that has harvested an animal with with a beast broadhead sees.
Yeah, I mean, like when I see the ballistic gels video and I see it open it first and then start to close, I'm like, oh, yeah, that broadhead's working exactly the way it was supposed to be. Because here's the bottom line, folks. Ballistic gel, let's just simplify it. Ballistic gel is way thicker than hide or muscle or lungs or heart. Period. End of story. The only thing in an animal that can overcome the tension required to close the blade is bone. But ballistic gel will too. But luckily, there's no ballistic gel inside animals. So,
Yeah, so that works out great because we, like as I
right?
mentioned, real animals is the goal.
Exactly. So, last question I have for you here. I have, I started to tell folks that if you utilize the system, basically the practice head that is available in the 2 packs, or now we're actually selling the practice heads in 3 packs, and there's also 3 packs of heads available, and that's accuracy. Um, and so I have literally started telling people that the beast broadheads, if you tune and sight in with the practice heads, that the beast broadheads are first fire capable, meaning if you watch Josh Bomar down in Tanzania and he drops a buck 40 bomb on an ostrich, that was the first time that broadhead was fired.
Yeah.
Period. You can take it out of the case, you can screw it onto your broadhead, and you can fire at an animal with it. You don't need to, it's first fire capable. So, talk a little bit about accuracy. Talk about, I mean, you already talked about the 0.66, but talk a little bit about the practice head, the accuracy of the practice head versus the real thing. and some of your, target knowledge going into resulting in an incredibly accurate broadhead.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's important. And that was also something that, again, through the design phase, we took into account. We wanted this to be truly field point accurate. And, everybody says it, but it's not something that many times is representative in my personal experience. And this is my opinion and my results. But broadhead expandables, I would get, I'd be shooting 4, 6 inches low at 100 and never understanding why and having a specific reason. So we wanted to ensure we translated that. The curved blades obviously maximizing aerodynamics in the 0.66 inflate cross section, as you mentioned. We included the practice tip to it has identical in-flight characteristics, but more so that our customers can obviously confirm what we have engineered into the product, that they can confirm what we're telling them. So the center of mass of a beast broadhead with the fully assembled, ready to screw on your arrow. What we did was we took a field point and then throughout the design phase and found where the center of mass was of that field point. So when that's screwed on the end of your arrow, essentially how much leverage does that field point put on the end of the shaft? So we wanted to match the beast broadhead to be as identical to that as humanly possible. And we were able to get the center of mass of the beast assembled broadhead ready to hunt within millimeters of a field point. And what that does is because that center of mass correlates so close and nearly identical to that field point, is that it doesn't have dramatic effect on tune whenever you thread your broadhead on and get ready to go out and hunt. So a lot of times with broadheads with long ferrules or a lot of massive geometry differences, which is understandable from a field tip, that center of mass, it's hard to tell where it is, and the length of that has a lot to do with how it would tune. So by having that center of mass within a few millimeters of the field tip, the leverage that induces on the end of your outsert or end of your insert is going to be a minimal difference whenever that arrow is fired out of the bow. With that, the differential in that leverage or the differential in that center of mass affects how it would tune. Understandably so, because it essentially feels heavier or feels lighter from that leverage. You can change how the arrow reacts, thus changing your tune, thus affecting downrange accuracy. So that was a big thing that we took into consideration with the design phase of, being very deliberate with every single intimate detail of this project, even down to this with where's the center of mass? How does that correlate? How do we make this hyper accurate so you can thread this on and be ready to hunt? And, we've had some skeptics. People be like, oh, they, like myself, had experiences where maybe that wasn't the case. And they are able to confirm that it is in fact hitting with your field points in their results, and we're incredibly happy that our customers are able to see what we work so hard to engineer into the product.
Absolutely. So, what's next?
Man, just
Products. Give them up.
hey, guys, I think I know this is the wrong answer, but you're just gonna have to wait and see. We have some very, very cool things in the works. We weren't just working on broadheads these 3.5 years, or the beast specifically. We have lots of things that, again, our goal is to make archery better, make better products, things that we would want as bow hunters and archers, that we want to translate that to physical product, to continue to innovate, try to raise the bar, and just maximize what we can bring to the space, and just increase everybody's experience behind the bow. And there's a lot of different product lines that I would love to talk about, but obviously you guys are going to have to wait and see whenever we start firing those off. But I will say this: 2025 is going to be very exciting. We have a lot of things we've been working really hard on, and been in the pipeline, and all of those products have the same level of effort, optimum product quality, all the details that everyone has seen Beast, maybe other products with our nose button, grip tape, peep tuners, everything you guys see from us. We put that same amount of effort, and I can promise you the future is very bright with what we have going on. And we are literally just getting started. This is the tip of the iceberg, and we're not going to stop, and we're going to keep working hard, and just try to continue to churn out the best product we possibly can, from all the experience with my target archery side, the competitive side, hunting, obviously with Josh and Sarah's knowledge in the background of the sport as well, that we're just meshed that all together to just put our brains to make the best products that we possibly can.
There we go. All right, buddy. I appreciate it. Let everybody know where they can, not that David's a social media guy, but let everybody know where they can keep up with David Hauser and Beast on the World Wide Web.
Yeah, I mean, Instagram, my handle's at David Hauser, and then of course at Beast Broadheads at Bowmar Archery, and then of course the Bowmar Bow Hunting YouTube channel where a lot of the beast content with hunting videos, content regarding beast that you guys can find all of that there, and we'd love to have you come check it out. And beastbroadheads.com, bowmararchery.com, where you guys can find our product online, and of course go to your local dealers. Tell them if they don't have Beast, we want Beast, and we would love to be in every shop nationwide. So if your shop doesn't have Beast, they can certainly hit us up or any of our other products, and we'd love to bring them on and all work together to grow this brand as big as we can.
There we go. All right, everybody. That's David Hauser. He's the head engineer, uh, ex current and sometimes part-time pro when he decides to show up. Absolutely, absolutely a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate his time today. Obviously, talking with David is always fun. Super smart kid. And look, folks, what's going on over there at Bomar Archery? I know Bomar started with the nose button, and everybody's like, "Well, I've been doing that with a piece of D-loop material since the early 2000s." Yeah, well, guess what? Why didn't you make a product then? So Josh is about solving problems. And so, the nose button, of course, wildly successful. I mean, any archery shop that doesn't have a bucket of those things just to throw on every new archer's bow, it just helps people be more accurate. And so,
100%.
yeah, and I mean the nose buttons, the peep tuners, the grip tapes. I mean, and now with Beast entered in a category. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When Josh first told me about it, I'm like, you understand how competitive the broadhead category is, right? And then he sent me one of the super duper early ones, and I'm like, oh, gotcha. Yeah, no, you're gonna be able to play. And so, look, go check out the Beast social medias, the Bomar bow hunting stuff, and just look at some of the animals that have been harvested with these things. It doesn't matter whether you're shooting. I mean, there's women that are shooting 45 pounds, getting passus on elk. Um, Go watch the video of Josh shooting. Josh is savage. He shot a 2.3 Beast out of his kid's 6-pound bow. It opened on the target. He unscrewed that broadhead, put it into a mission crossbow, unedited video, and popped a balloon at 110 yards out of a crossbow. Figure that shit out. And so
Yeah.
the
All Beast crossbow approved. Great point there, GP.
dude, I'm telling you, man, there's no extra. I'm a nerd. So whenever I go to big box stores, I look, and so many other broadhead companies have crossbow approved broadheads, but they got to have a different collar. They got to have a different screw. They got to have a different this. They got to have a different that. You want to know what's got to be different on a Beast broadhead to shoot it out of a crossbow? Not a damn thing. There's some words on the packaging. As far as the product goes, there is no difference. You can shoot a Beast broadhead out of a kid's bow, you can shoot it out of an adult's bow, and you can shoot it out of a 500 foot per second crossbow. It's it's wild. So go check it out. I will warn you ahead of time. Don't don't f around and find out. Those blades are stupid sharp. Stupid sharp. Don't don't test them because you'll get got. But anyway, super stoked for Josh and David. What they've created has absolutely set a new standard. The mechanical broadhead category has needed it for years and years. There's really not been any advancements over there. So lots of more cool stuff coming out of David and Josh and Bomar Archery and Beast. So be sure to tune in. I know it's late season, folks. If you're still out there hunting, put on your damn safety vest, your harness, your strap, your whatever you got to prevent yourself from falling on your face. Do it. It doesn't matter if you're just going out for a late hunt in the afternoon because it's cold. You want to put on your safety harness. You can't fly. I know I say it at every podcast, but the fewer stories we can hear about people falling onto their face, the better. Because as usual, folks, we want to hear from you, not about you. And as always, guys, you guys know the drill. Love, peace, and chicken grease.